This is Duke University.
Hello and welcome to EGNP's first and third series. My name is Angela Bonner, Associate Director of Career Readiness in the Duke Career Center. And we just kind of created this series so that students could get a chance to get in front of folks, hear different experiences as you all make your career choices. So I'm so happy to have Steve Hassey here, who is a Duke alum, public policy major, here with us to kind of just talk about what he's been doing, how he's gotten there, and whatever little nuggets that he wants to share with you all. So Steve, thank you so much for being here. How are you this morning?
I am doing great. Yeah, thanks for having me. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
happy to have you. So we're just gonna kind of dive right in, and I'm just gonna just give us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, definitely. So I am Duke class of 2019, and studied public policy, as you said. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, and let's see, like kind of my career trajectory. After graduating, I actually worked in Durham for about a year. I worked on political campaigns from kind of May 2019 through the 2020 election. So I started working on Elizabeth Warren's presidential campaign, and then once that ended, sadly unsuccessfully, we I kind of bounced around to a couple of other Democratic groups, and then worked for a state senator in New Hampshire, managing his reelection campaign. Um, and then kind of realized that I wanted to have a more stable work situation. And so instead of moving from state to state, I moved to an agency that was doing a lot of um, both political and nonprofit work, and started doing digital advertising for them and kind of honing that as a specialization. And I worked there for about just over a year and a half, before I moved in-house with the World Food Program, which is where I work today, and where I've been just over a year. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, awesome. So, as you said, you work for the World Food Program, and you're right now serving as a manager of digital and advertising and marketing. So, tell us a little bit about what you do and what your day to day looks like.
Yeah, definitely. So a lot of the work for the World Food Program in the US is primarily built around donor engagement and working with um, basically advocacy for congressional funding for the worldwide program. And so my work pretty much fits in those two buckets. The first is working on ads to engage potential and existing donors, to make sure that we're securing as much money as we can for the global program. And so a lot of that is working within our creative teams to think about like what graphics or videos we can put together, or writing copy for Facebook ads, for TikTok ads, for kind of ads across any number of platforms. Um, and yeah, making sure that people are informed and engaged with what we're doing. And then the kind of other side of that is that a majority of funding for the World Food Program does come from congressional funding. And so a lot of our work is also more in the advocacy realm of getting folks engaged and reaching out to their representatives and their senators, to make sure that food insecurity worldwide is kind of staying at the front of their docket. And yeah, so I think it kind of fits in those two buckets, but running ads around both those things.
Cool. So, tell me then, what do you like the best about your job, and what is a part of your job that you could probably do without?
Yeah, great question. I think so I'd say best about my job. One, I think the people I work with are really great. I think I'm really lucky in that I work at an organization that's doing work that I really care about. And so I get to work with people who also really care about that. And it's really cool to just like have that common alignment and like common passion. And so my direct team are just like wonderful people. And so that's really great. And then I think in the day-to-day of the work, like I'm kind of an analytics minded person. And so being able to kind of marry the creative and the analytics of marketing and kind of meeting in the middle of that is just a really awesome niche for me. Um, I think the least favorite part is kind of just, I think I've worked in really fast moving um, job situations. And like I think campaigns are just by their nature, they're built in a couple months and need to be moving incredibly quickly. And so I think the part that I'm like, ooh, is just kind of the bureaucracy of it all. And I think like sometimes smaller or more like entrenched organizations, it's like harder to get moving on things. And so I think like approval chains and having to navigate all that kind of stuff is not always the most fun for me.
It's not fun, but it's part of the process, right?
Yeah, 100%. I'm like, I get it, but also, yeah.
Oh man. Okay, so here's my next set of questions for you. Okay,
Yep,
with this being EGNP's first and third, it wouldn't be a session without a first and third question. Okay.
100%.
So tell me about the first mistake or challenge that you faced in your career, and how did you get through it?
Yeah. Um, I think so I'm gonna go with like kind of the challenge side of things because I think my biggest challenge early on in my career, I started out. So obviously, I graduated in May 2019, and the biggest early challenge was working on campaigns during the pandemic, and figuring out what a campaign could look like. Because the historic way that I have thought about campaigning is a lot of like organizing of like door to door conversations, and getting a campaign, getting a candidate in front of 100 people, 1,000 people, and talking about what they believe in. And all of a sudden, I was in charge of a campaign and needing to keep up with health policies that I just like aren't my specialty. Like I am not a health expert in any way. Um, and so I think that was a really big challenge for me in terms of, yeah, just like being the person who had to tell my candidate, like, this is what we should do, this is what we shouldn't do, and kind of lay the groundwork for what that should look like and I think there's a lot of like imposter syndrome on one side, but also just like I am not an expert in this thing. Like it's kind of imposter syndrome, but maybe it's just imposter. And yeah, I think that was a moment for me where it was really helpful to rely on one like experts and like trying to learn a lot from um like White House briefings or briefings of people I know. And then two, I think relying on the advice of other people I knew in the field and people I knew in my personal life who were a lot closer to being medical experts than me. Um, and so I think that was a time where I was really grateful. It was my second campaign, not my first. And so I had a network of people from the Warren campaign who I could reach out to and be like, hey, we're all navigating. Like, this is not a problem that's isolated to my campaign. It's a country and a worldwide problem. And how are y'all thinking about this? And what's your plan? And I could use that to inform my own, like the plan for my campaign. And so I think it was a moment for me where I feel like a lot of the time leading up to that, I had been like something of a like, I just need to hunker down myself and like figure this out. And I think it was a really important time for me to take a step back and be like, this isn't something for me to figure out just myself. It's something that I really need other people's input on. And I feel like that was a really good lesson for me at the time, that I feel like I've taken with me of most problems are not problems that I'm facing by myself. Like there's things that other people are going through or have gone through, and taking the time to like reach out for advice is super worthwhile and really helpful.
I'm so glad that you spoke about that, because we have those conversations quite often with students and helping them understand how vital a network is and how important it is. And you don't know everything, and it's okay to like bring some brilliant minds together when you don't know it, because we're trying to get to the same goal, right? So I really appreciate you speaking on that part in the process you had to go through, especially during COVID, which I know is just a whole
Yeah, 100%. It was a tough time.
Okay. So here's the second part, and you get to pick which side you want. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the third best piece of advice you have received? Or what is the third or internship that you had, and what was your biggest takeaway from it?
Yeah. Okay, I think I'm gonna go with the third best piece of advice.
Okay.
And I really had to, yeah, I had to think about this. Like, what I had to rank different pieces of advice that I've gotten. And I was like, this is the third best piece of advice I've gotten. And yeah, I feel like it was very early on in my career of um a friend who basically it was after working on campaigns and I was kind of plotting out like, what do I want to do next? And a friend kind of gave me the advice of either becoming a generalist or a specialist. And kind of, so at that point I was managing campaigns, and the kind of generalist path would have been like continuing to do that, becoming like having a lot of knowledge or a little bit of knowledge about a lot of things and being able to manage people. And yeah, like being able to manage a digital marketing person or an organizing person or a finance person, and knowing enough about those things to be able to do it, or become a specialist and be able to know a lot about one thing. And ultimately, I looked at that and I knew I had an interest in digital advertising. I had done a couple of internships in college with places, with agencies that were doing with like digital advertising agencies. And I knew that I enjoyed that work. And yeah, so I feel like that was an opportunity, like kind of another opportunity for me to kind of take a step back and just look and make a decision about kind of here's a branch and this is kind of where I I want to take this path, not this path. And so I think that was really helpful for me to realize that I could gain a lot of knowledge about one thing and kind of be a subject matter expert in that thing. And yeah, I think for me personally, it's really, I really like just diving into something and getting to know a lot about it. And so I think that was a really nice framework. It was a third best piece of advice, kind of, like it was a really nice framework for me to kind of thinking about what I wanted my next role to look like.
Cool. So then let me ask you, how do you think your degree has helped you thus far? Outside of yes, we know your public policy and we know that you've been working on campaigns and things of that nature, but are there nuances that a student really wouldn't think about having this degree that has helped you thus far?
Mm-hmm. I think the big thing for me, yeah, I really enjoyed my time doing public policy in undergrad. I think the big thing for me was like, I guess kind of two parts. The first is analysis. I think a lot of the things that I've taken from public policy are the ability to look at like just figure out what distinct options are and then being able to evaluate them. I think a lot of my public policy courses are, I think of like economics graphs, and economics was not my strong suit. But just being able to take a set of numbers and really plot things out and kind of determine what set of options is going to be the right set of options. And so my work is not economics in nature, it's more, but it is analytical in nature. And so being able to have my math of like these things are working, these things are not, and then being able to take that and distill it for someone else in my organization. And I think that's the second part, is so much of public policy was writing memos and having to really succinctly take a complex issue and distill it down into like 2 or 3 pages. And this is why I think this, and you should also think this. I think that has been really helpful for me in my career of, yeah, there's so many things in campaigns, in advertising, in any number of different things where my work is complex and it'll take a week, a month to like analyze something that's really complex. And I need to make sure that I can get it across to a client or a chief marketing officer or someone else. And they don't always have the time to go through 2 hours of something. They might have time for 20 minutes. And being able to distill that week or month of research into 20 minutes is something that I feel like I really gained from my public policy degree.
That's definitely a skill.
Yeah.
To make it absorbable for folks is yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So thinking about professional organizations and things of that nature, and trying to make sure students are aware of different things, and again growing their networks, are there professional organizations that you are a part of or that you would recommend students become a part of and join?
So honestly, I'm not a part of many professional organizations. I feel like when I when I was a student, I was definitely like reaching out to Duke people left and right, and like using the alumni directory and being like, hey, what do you do? Like, should I be? I feel like I was so curious just as somebody who I'd had my like paper route and I worked at the Christmas tree farm, and I don't know, like hadn't had an office job or like a 9 to 5 job. And so I feel like that was a really big thing for me when I was an undergrad, was just reaching out to people left and right. Um, I feel like the professional organization that I've been a part of at previous jobs had a lot of my previous jobs have been unionized. And I think that's been good for me in terms of like getting to, particularly in a remote environment, like getting to talk to other people who are more junior or like aren't higher up, and like getting to understand what they value about work and what they want their workplace to look like. And yeah, I feel like that has been a pretty powerful thing at past jobs as well. So yeah, I feel like in unionized workplaces, getting involved with the union is always a great thing too.
Awesome. So you hear that, students? The key is to network and talk to people. You've got to,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
got to reach
seriously.
out. And if you have trouble with that, we can help you with that in Career Center. But anyway,
Yeah.
so here is my last question for you. Okay. Um, so thinking back, when you started your first job, what advice would you have given yourself when you accepted that first job, or right when right after you started? What piece of advice would you give yourself now?
Yeah. I think um there are two things. I think the first is right after I started, like taking the time to get to know your coworkers. And I think everyone is where they are for a reason. And so getting to know them both at like as human beings, and like what are people doing outside of the office? What are they passionate about? And two, like why do they do what they do? And I think that has just given me the opportunity to like approach interactions with people with a lot of compassion, of like, this is not someone who just types things into Excel. This is someone who A, has a lot of passion around, in my instance, like getting food to people who need it, and B, who is a really big runner outside of work, or is taking care of their family in this way. And I feel like just getting to know people as full human beings is really important for me. And I think the second piece that I think is less true for my first job, but more true in later job, and kind of a skill that skill is just has become a part of my decision making processes, is I think being patient about what jobs I want. I think I'm really lucky right now in that I work at I really love where I work. And so there's probably a time in which I'll move on to some other organization, but I know that it's not going to be a place where it checks like 2 out of 5 boxes. Like I think just work is such a big part of life. It's 40 hours of my week every single week. And so really taking the time to ask questions about like, what does this look like? Like are your team values? Do they kind of match with my values? And yeah, I think that was less for my first job. I think when I got my first job, I was like, you want to hire me? Thank God. The but more for future jobs of, yeah, like I can be a little more patient and make sure that it's the right fit, because hopefully it's not a place that I'm in and out of. It's a place that I'm going to be happy to be at for a couple of years at least. And yeah, not like dreading every moment, like happy to work with the people that I'm working with.
Awesome. Oh, wow. This has been a great conversation. Nice little tidbits of information. I got a lot out of it. I hope students do as well. So thank you so much for joining us. And if students want to reach out to you, can they reach out to you through the Duke Alumni directory or LinkedIn?
Yeah, definitely. Either totally works. My personal email is set up on the alumni directory. LinkedIn, it's just Steve Hassey. Yeah, either works, and happy to talk to anyone.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, students. Check us out next time on the next episode of EGNP First and Third. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks for having me.